So, welcome to the third LiveStore office hours. It's been a little bit. I think we did the first one in January and then one, I think, in March or so. And I've been very busy the last couple of weeks, mostly still working on LiveStore version 0.3, which I'll share more about. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Johannes Schickling. I'm living here in beautiful Berlin. I am next to building LiveStore. I'm building LiveStore to build an actual product as part of Over Engineering Studio, which is a product studio where I'm working on Overtone. And some of you might also know me as the host of Local First FM. And in the past, I've been the founder of Prisma. So for today, we have a whole bunch of interesting things to talk about. I want to share a little update, probably the last update before the release, about LiveStore 0.3. This has been a big one. If I would feel ready to call this, if we would already have a LiveStore 1.0, this would probably deserve to be 2.0, but we're not there yet. But this is a big one. Then I want to show you a few demos that I worked on here, a few sneak peeks. And then we have two contributor updates. One from Bito from Expo, where he'll share a bit about the Expo workshop he's going to give at Local First Conf in less than 2 weeks. And from Igor, who has been doing some really cool work on performance testing of LiveStore, which he'll also share some of the insights and results of that, which is super cool. I have a few suggestions or requests for the community, invitations, and then hopefully we'll spend a bunch of time on your submitted questions. So with that, I want to go into the LiveStore 0.3 update. I wanted to add a lot more here to the slides, but I ran out of time. So I'm going back to the source of truth here. And the source of truth for that is the changelog. The changelog is also live here. It's also on the website. The docs are available now on dev.docs.livestore.dev. That's basically the pattern that I'm now going for, where the idea is that the website in the future will be LiveStore Dev, and then the docs will be just docs. docs.livestore.dev. This is where you currently see the main version of the docs, and the dev subdomain is pointing to the current to the current dev branch that has been the majority of work been happening there. And in the future, there will also be like a toggle here. So just for your orientation. And here you'll see also down there the changelog. And there has been a lot of stuff in here that I just want to, I've already covered a little bit of that in the past, and I want to work through that a bit more and present it in a more exciting way. But for now, I'll just cover a couple of the highlights that I'm really excited about. So some of it I've maybe already mentioned in a prior video, but I'll share it regardless. So the main theme of this entire version is really about syncing. The previous version of LiveStore had some initial support for syncing, but those were really just experiments. And 0.3 is really the first version that has like a proper sync system, a proper sync engine baked into LiveStore. And that's all. I think it's a very unique approach that is based on the idea of event sourcing. And there's a lot that I want to add on this in the future, since this is only the foundation to add a lot of exciting things in going forward. But it's already working, and I think should be a really, really nice foundation for apps to be built on top of. So I'll share a little bit more about the syncing specifics in a moment. But just going high level through a couple of other things. I've mentioned the node adapter. That has been polished a lot more. The node adapter specifically, I have now split that up into two parts. We can see over here, we see the platform adapters. So the node adapter has now the default adapter, which runs in a single thread, which has two storage variants. One is for file system, the other is for in-memory. And it even allows you to connect the dev tools directly running to a Node adapter running in Node. Actually also runs in Bun, and I've also now made it work in Deno. So all the major server-side JavaScript flavors are working. And I have plans to bring it even to more runtimes with the same ideas. But besides the single-threaded version, for some use cases, particularly heavy server loads, it can be useful to follow a similar threading architecture to the web adapter, where you can basically run the main store that you interact with on one thread, and some of the heavy lifting of writing to the database file and doing the syncing with a backend is happening in another worker. So that both works, and you can switch depending on your use case. So I'm really excited about this. And the web adapter actually works in a very similar way, where you have here like either an in-memory adapter or you have a persisted adapter. So that is the Node adapter. And before going into syncing, just a couple of like other callouts here. The Expo adapter has seen a lot of improvements. That is really like a second complete overhaul of the Expo adapter. Should be a lot more stable now. And importantly, it now adds support for syncing. So I think that's a really big deal. And we've also adjusted the Expo examples accordingly to come out of the box with like syncing pre-configured, in this case with the Cloudflare worker sync backend, but it also works with the other sync backend implementation for Electric SQL. So both of those should be in a pretty good spot. And then there, in terms of new features, this also already includes a experimental framework integration for Solid. Thanks again to Cool for this amazing PR. I think there's still a lot more work that to be done to get this into a spot where it's non-experimental, but it's a great foundation. And if any of you are very interested in Solid, please give it a try. And I would love to work with you on making the Solid adapter more solid. Apologies for the pun. So about before going back to the syncing, one other thing I want to highlight here, which is the simplified API. This has been taking me a lot of work, but I'm really happy where this has landed. Also, shout out to Igor, who we hear later from today. He's been providing a lot of great feedback to me that motivated me to make this change, which is really like a change from a conceptual mental model perspective. Like, how does LiveStore actually work? And the core idea behind LiveStore is that you have this separation of state and events. And I wanted to make this a lot clearer like in the API that folks are using. So this is why I've adjusted the API from before, where you had mutations and tables. I've now refactored that to look like the following, where you have your event definitions, and from those event definitions, well, in this case, the simple example, we can actually look at the getting started, which contains a slightly more extended one. Here, this is what the event definitions now look like. So it's only the event name and the schema for the arguments of an event. And then this is what the table definitions for the state looks like. And this is really the simplicity and clarity that I was going for, that you can basically see, hey, the core of a LiveStore schema are events and state. The way how you go from events to state is through materializers. Previously, those were like events and materialized together. They were together and were called mutations. But this feels a lot clearer to me because it nicely separates the two concepts. Where events, they're always valid and they define a fact. And a materializer is rather what you do about that. And the materializer always depends on what sort of table layout you're working with. So if you're here to your tables, let's say you refactor that instead of having completed Boolean. Let's say you have here status and like to do, in progress, done, archived. Now you could change it here and just adjust your materializer, and LiveStore would do automatically the database migrations for you. And I was just going for this very simple mental model of like having events and state, and events are really the source of truth for everything happening in LiveStore, which are being synced across the entire system. So this has been a big internal change that I hope makes LiveStore a lot easier to understand and easier to grok. And yeah, another thing I had here on the list is something we've been already using here now. I've been busy working on the docs. And if you compare this from the previous docs of LiveStore.dev, if you compare this to this, you might already see hopefully quite the difference. It is not everything in here is like fully fleshed out. So there's often also just like a little note where I want to write out more. But I hope the most important pieces, like how LiveStore works, when to use LiveStore, and so on, like I hope that already is helpful. I've also started writing out some guides for data modeling, where like if you're building an app and you need to figure out like, hey, is LiveStore for me, and orienting around some examples. Hopefully this is useful, where you can see, okay, this is how I can structure an app in a certain way. So we can dive into that a little bit more in a moment as well. But yeah, one thing I'm really excited about is the syncing. I wanted to prepare a more fully fleshed out demo, but I'll combine this with another thing that I want to show is that hold on, some sneak peeks. I think I've been semi-public about this so far, but I'm very excited to announce that LiveStore will become open source very soon at the local FirstConf in 2 weeks. So this will remain a secret for people outside of this virtual room. If the word gets out, I'm not too mad, but yeah, maybe keep it to yourself for now. And at that point, there will also be a new website. And this new website, I'm trying to better explain what LiveStore is. Maybe you've seen it already on social media, but it is still work in progress, but I'll show it to you regardless. And it features some of the syncing. So this is the website that's coming up. Please don't. A lot of things will be removed. I don't want to pride myself here too much that this will be replaced with a better quote. But the main thing I want to show here with this is like that this actually includes like some real examples for real-time syncing. So if you can see this here from this example, this shows like how you can like use this for a real app. And this already demonstrates, and this is like using the real sync backend. So this is made life a little bit harder for myself here. I could have just connected those two in memory, but this is actually fully going through WebSocket connections. So if you're doing something here, this is sending all those messages through WebSocket connections. And there's still some work that I want to do to make there might be some performance, some latencies that I'm still working on, but the foundation is there, and I'm really excited about this. And this little example even like allows you to simulate going offline, where you can do like different things here, and then you can go online again, and it syncs up. So really excited about this. The website contains a whole bunch of goodies, including that you can see here, like hi live stream. And so this even has like built-in support for the DevTools here. And where you can see everything going on here. So really excited about all of this, but I could keep going on about this for a long time, but we gotta move on and timing here a bit. And I wanna hand things over to Beto about the upcoming Expo workshop.
So hello everyone, my name is Beto. I work as a developer success engineer at Expo. And we're going to be doing a workshop in the Local First conference in less than 2 weeks now. And I'm going to show you just a sneak peek of how this looks like and some of the things that we've been doing using Expo and LiveStore. So right now, Expo SQLite, Expo Web is not compatible with LiveStore. So we wanted to integrate web support as well. So we end up creating a monorepo. And I want to quickly show you like the structure of the monorepo. It's basically 4 packages: web, mobile, the sync backend. And I want to really highlight that LiveStore works really nice on a monorepo structure because at the end of the day, Expo apps and the web app both are React applications, and you can share nicely all the events, the queries, the schema, the types, and reutilize that across mobile and web. So that's one of the really nice highlights that I wanted to mention. Another very cool thing is that I have here all these devices. And the one on the right, it's actually a real iPhone that I have here. It's using Expo Go. And since we're using durable objects for the sync server, deploying is super easy, and that allows us to connect through an HTTP server, meaning that I can test this application on my real iPhone and say, hello, LiveStore, and we can see real-time updates everywhere. So on the website, on my simulators, and my real device. So this is great for developing applications. We can add reactions, and you can react here, and I will get real-time updates everywhere. We can do like a long press for a super reaction. And that's great for, quickly testing on a real device, but also I want to show you how this looks on the local server. By the way, developing using the HTTPS server, it's really nice now that Cloudflare offers real-time logs. But let's go ahead and switch to the local server here.
And it's even free now. The Cloudflare stuff has become free recently. So
yes, and it's free.
Even fewer reasons to use it.
Yeah, that is great.
To not use it.
So I'm going to switch to the local server. So I'm going to close my real device now. Let me close this. And let's see if I quickly go to the store ID. I'm going to change this to be demo2 and demo2 as well on web. I have the backend running here. So if I refresh my application, now we don't have any nodes. Another thing that I wanted to mention is that we implemented authentication. We want to really show people that they can build secure applications that allow syncing and local first as well. If I go ahead and sign in, what we're doing is just a super simple authentication that uses a JSON web token. And then when we connect to the backend server or the sync server here, let me just go ahead and refresh. Well, you can see it right now. We are sending a payload. So LiveStore allows us to send a payload when you connect to the sync server. And I'm taking this from the user. It's a real JWT. And then in the backend, so if I go to the sync server here, we get this token, and then we decode the information of the user. And then based on that, we can allow the user to connect to the sync server or no. And I want to show you how this looks in action. What would happen if someone is authenticated? So in this case, we have Johannes on the left, Beto on the right, and Beto is doing stuff, and Johannes gets real-time updates here on the Android device. Now, if I go ahead and stop the server, these two devices are still connected, right? So if I add a reaction here, we still get updates. But if I go to the here and just replace this for a fake or invalid auth token or unauthenticated user and restart the server, and now just the iPhone 16 is going to connect with this fake token. The application still works because this is a local first application, of course, and it works even if you don't have a sync server. But if we look at this sync server, we get a lot of errors right now, and that is because the token is invalid. You can see here, error verifying the token. But the application can be still used, and in fact, the people that are connected can still use and get updates. But this guy that is unauthenticated is not getting anything. But if he authenticates, then we should end up with the same state. Everyone should get this rocket emoji reaction. So if I hit save, right away the authentication and the sync works. So this is just to show how you can protect your backend. And of course, this is just a super simple integration, but it's using a J2. And yeah, we're decoding that. We're sending all the information. And yeah, so that's basically all I wanted to show you guys. Unless you have any questions, that's all from my end.
That was awesome. That was, speaking of live demos, I wanted to prepare one. I'm very glad I didn't, since you knocked it out of the park. Thank you so much. And for those of you who are coming to the local First Conf, not sure whether there's still free spots in the workshop for Vito, but you should certainly consider joining.
Yes, I'm super excited for that.
That is awesome. Great work. Well, next up, we have Igor sharing an update on his investigations to performance testing.
All right. So hey guys. So for giving a bit of context, some time ago I was exploring the LiveStore code base, and I somehow delved deep into the SQLite configuration. I got a bit curious about all of that, and at some point there was a decision to be made if we were turning on or not a configuration on how we would run SQLite. But we're not sure if that change would make any significant improvement or not to LiveStore. And so that's how I got started on this project of writing some performance tests that could give us some visibility on what are the different performance behaviors of LiveStore and if that change would be beneficial or not.
Right. Just to add a little bit of context here, I was really excited. I was in touch with Igor for a while and saw that he, more than most users, really started looking underneath the covers of how LiveStore works. And I got very excited about that. And then he found and there, if you start looking, you'll see many opportunities for where things are not as ideal yet, and where I'm excited about this, since this means we can make something that's already pretty good even better. And so Igor found one of those and suggested oh, can I improve this? And I took the gamble of not quite going to that finish point right away, but I pitched the idea to him hey, wouldn't it be nice if we had a performance benchmarking test suite where you can actually measure and measurably see your improvement? And before actually merging the improvement Igor wanted to make, he took the long detour of creating a performance benchmark suite or performance testing suite. And that was the little anecdote. I'm very, very excited that he took that long detour, and there's more detours to come maybe.
For sure. All right, so to share first, I will share the documentation that I wrote on that. So this is a new page on the docs that will be released with the...
Your screen is not visible yet?
Is it showing?
There you go.
All right. So this is a new page that I wrote for the new version that is going to be released soon. Here I'm just having a summary of the test, why we're doing the test, what we're measuring at the moment, which is latency across different user interaction scenarios and also memory usage. And then I also have a link here for people to access that gets us to the public dashboard. So this is a dashboard that has only limited information. It's only the latest test result on the main branch. Unfortunately, Grafana has some limitations where it doesn't allow to use variables when it's a public dashboard. But we have also a non-public one, although if you want to have access, we can grant you access. That gives us way more information that I will show later. And then if we look now into the code, here into the code base, now there is this directory here, perf, which has all the performance tests. And here I've wrote a small set of tests for the latency that we have here. And there's about I think 5 or 6 scenarios. And also for memory usage. And so those tests were actually inspired by this JS framework benchmark that's pretty popular, and it's used usually by frameworks like React, Solid, and so on. But this give like a good starting point of like different scenarios that would help testing like the latency and memory usage. But this is just like a reference point. We can write more tests. I wouldn't use this one, but it's like a good set of tests to start for this performance suite. And then for the dashboard that we have here, there is this private one. Hopefully the link is good. Yeah, that we have access where every time we have like a commit on the main branch, or every time someone opens a pull request and also add new commits to that pull request, there is a new test execution of all the performance tests. And so these show up here. These are like sorted by time, and there is one for each commit. And so this allows us like to spot any regression, or even like see opportunities to improve the performance. So this is like for this specific test suite. We can switch here. We can see here the median latency of all the samples for that specific test run. So here, each bar here is a specific test run, and this here is the same thing that we have like on the public dashboard. Something else I also wanted to share. So here I put like some details on how like the latency is measured, how the memory usage is measured, if someone wants like to actually verify if everything is correctly being measured. And there is some like specificity on how you have to measure latency, and also on the memory, like we had to use some specific like Chrome APIs to get the memory usage in a way that's like reliable. And for the test, you can like run yourself locally using like just cloning the repository and just going to that directory here. You can run the tests, and it's gonna run for all the test suites. And that can be useful like if you're trying to test like a new change, maybe like you change that database configuration, and so you can test locally, like you run first without that change, and then you run a second time with that change and see if there was like any meaningful improvement or not. Something else we can also do is also to run this other command. So that's like pnpm run test profile, and that's also gonna record a performance Chrome profile file, so which you should be able to find here in test results. So there is one for each scenario, and then you can actually load this on Chrome. So you can just drag and drop this here, and then you're able to see all the function callings for that test execution. There is also something else that we've done here. For each of those tests, we also use OpenTelemetry traces and metrics. And so when you run the test, you're also able to see those traces and metrics. Unfortunately, I forgot to already prepare this, so it's going to take too much time, I think, for me to run the test now, because the whole test suite takes 10 minutes. But if you configure your .env or c.local file, and you point this to a locally running OpenTelemetry receiver, I believe that's the name. It can be like a
collector. Yeah.
Collector, right. And then you are able to see then the traces and also the metrics that are collected from these runs. And let's see if I'm still missing something. Yeah, so those tests are run like against like the test app. So this test app is based on the framework benchmark, where we're using React, as this is like the most popular JS framework on the front end. So the test pretty much use these buttons here and calculate like the latency and the memory usage after doing those actions. And so this is like pretty useful because it's like they are not like creating like one item would be representative of like a user interaction, but it's like a way we have like many items, and then we can like, okay, if for 1,000 items like slow, we know like the improvement we would do here would also impact like for small user interactions. And yeah, I think that's pretty much, unless you guys have any questions. I think that covers it all.
That is awesome. Great work. I've spent quite a bit of time with Igor on the various aspects of this project, and this is a really great milestone that we've reached with it now, but it's really also like a foundation to add even more on top of it. Since like while we've been doing that, we've already hit a whole bunch, we've uncovered a couple of like weird things which we fixed, which was very much like the thing I was hoping for, that this should drive visibility into for like maintainers and contributors to like ideally improve things, make things better, and keep things fast over time, but also for developers who want to build something on top of LiveStore, who are evaluating it, whether it fits their requirements. Like if someone is investigating it thoroughly, then they probably also want to know like, hey, does it scale? How does it work? And for my like deployment scenario, and hopefully this provides some foundation to build trust and a better understanding. So thank you so much for this amazing effort, Igor, and thank you to both of you, Bido and Igor, for presenting this. But before we are moving on to community questions, maybe we use this time to allow for some questions to anything that was shared before, whether it's from Bido, Igor, or me, for the folks in the chat or in the video chat here. Just grab the mic and talk along if you want to share something. Don't be shy, otherwise we'll move on.
I have a question. What does mean highlighting a selected item in the test?
I think that was like one of those rows. I think that was per commit, and there's basically a matter like for now, like to the one goal with the test suite is for like me and other maintainers as we're working on it to see at minimum, do we make something worse? And if we see one of those bars kind of like double or get much worse, then this is like an additional signal to like let's say TypeScript fails or a lint rule fails. This is something very black and white that we can see like, okay, this is now broken or this is worse. But benchmark tests help us to not it doesn't catch, or it's not something that wasn't broken before, but it's like slightly slower or worse than before. And that is basically what this is about. And so the goal for LiveStore is to build a very high performance system where we still have a lot of way to improve it even further. But this drives visibility, since if you want to build something that's fast and you don't know whether it's fast or not, since often those things are so fast that you can't really tell from just like using it whether it's now better or worse, since perception is different from reality, and at least for me, and that's where this drives visibility and feedback loops, and that's awesome.
In the future, we could also like add some performance budget where if like the performance results get worse by like let's say 5 or 10%. We make like the CI fails and report that information on a pull request as well. That's like also an improvement that we could add to this test.
Right. Cool. Unless there's more questions, I'll grab back the screen and we will continue. Entire screen. There you go. So thank you, Igor, again. 2 shout outs. I have added a section in the docs that I'm calling RFX. The idea here is it's in community. The idea is like a request for exploration. This is basically a list of ideas that popped up for me at some point or based on conversations, things that I think would be cool, that I would love to explore myself, but I only have so much time to do those explorations. So I just wanted to share those ideas and see whether any one of you or whoever is listening and viewing this later, maybe any of those are interesting to you to explore. And there's an invitation for you to explore those and share your findings with the audience. Just to name a few, Bido has already done some of those explorations, like how do you do authentication with LiveStore? We can go even further and say, how do we do authorization with LiveStore when we want to introduce access levels, etc. And we can go even all the way to say we want to do end-to-end encryption. All of those things are possible with LiveStore, but not baked in. So exploring those and sharing your findings would be really interesting. Server side. So Well, for those who are building not just local first apps, we all are familiar with like React server-side rendering and so on. So that's actually not mutually exclusive with LiveStore. That's possible to combine with LiveStore. I've done an experiment to do server-side rendering with LiveStore with some very promising results. Just needs to be productionized further. Or also to have like read models that you have on the server. So there's some really interesting things there, integration with like other existing APIs, other databases, combining LiveStore with CRDTs, adding more presence features like Figma-like mouse cursors, or collaborate, like I think blob files should be somewhere else, but like how do you work with blob files in a LiveStore app? Version control, this is like very much adding like cursor VS Code like collaboration features. So if you're thinking about the sort of like source control pane here, where we can have commit messages and like a commit history, etc., it is conceivable that this what's here, the domain here is code, but if you're building like something like Figma, you could build a commit feature for Figma on top of LiveStore. So version control feature is something that I think that's really underexplored and could be cool. And then a whole bunch of things around event sourcing. Obviously, also AI. There's, we haven't said the word today yet, but I mean, I suppose like most new apps that are being built right now are around AI, and LiveStore works super well as part of that. So you can run full local RAG systems with this. I think LiveStore works super well for building agents. So this is more like technological ideas, but here's like application ideas, where you could build a replacement for Doodle or Splitwise or a GitHub client. So I have like every day I have an idea that I want to build with LiveStore and I don't have the time for it. So maybe some of you want to build it instead. So this was just an invitation for that. Just moving this over here. And with that, another shout out or call out, which is that you're very much welcome to join, like to enter LiveStore through the gates as a contributor. We're very much looking for contributors in various areas. The docs could use a lot of help, helping maintain examples, making sure they're in a good spot. That typically requires a lot of work. Testing what Igor has been working on, and performance improvements, working on platform adapters. I think Ruby's poking around with like an Electron adapter, which I'm really excited about. Syncing adapters. So there's many ways to contribute, and if you're interested in that, just get in touch. There's many ways to do that. With that, we're ready for community questions. We got a whole bunch of great questions submitted. I would love if the people who submitted them can maybe quickly reframe them. I have just put them here in the chronological order. First up, we have Andre from Outline, who submitted actually, I think, 3 questions. I'm not sure whether we have time for all of them in depth. But Andre, if you want to join the video chat here and maybe raise your most burning question here, that we can discuss it.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so the main thing I've been working on is stuff related to performance, specifically the boot up time. So I've been working on specifically performance, like that initial, I'm using the React LiveStore provider and other hooks and things. And so the initial initializing of the worker and SQLite in OPFS is a noticeable delay. And because I'm using server-side rendering, in my case I'm using React Router 7 within Cloudflare, a Cloudflare worker. So I have the data to at least render out the UI, and so I've just been curious what seems like the best way to be able to say, here's the initial UI, maybe have something where it's able to capture if the user does try to interact with the page, it creates those events. It doesn't need to necessarily reflect them, like materialize them. But if it could queue them up, and then once the provider is finished loading, everything is finished getting hooked up, it would be cool if, those events could get processed, kind of like what Beta was demonstrating with the auth being invalid and then revalidated and everything just catches up. So that's kind of what I am imagining. Yeah, so that's kind of my main topic right now.
Totally. Well, this is a bit anticlimactic. I want to show this demo. I guess I still have a video explainer that I won't use the sound here, but I think this still illustrates a little bit of like some of the server-side rendering experiment that I have here. I'll see whether I can revive the deployment here. But the idea is really I have started exploring this, and it's looking very promising. It just needs to be productionized more. And like, what is the biggest thing here is like that it's highly specific on, like you're saying, you're using React Router 7. Like if someone is using TanStack Router or Next.js, like it's always, they have their own way of like what does server-side rendering even mean, and then you like serialize something, and then you want to rehydrate, you want to have as few like flickers and like weird things, and there's like a long way how we can go there, where like I have just so many ideas how we can improve this further to get really competitive in terms of the first load experience with like what Next.js is currently offering with React Server Components, maybe even combining it with React Server Components where you get the best of both worlds. So this requires some exploration, and from those explorations we need to see how much can we provide with LiveStore out of the box that it's just works super well with something like React Router, TanStack Router, TanStack Start, etc. So like we should certainly follow up on that and see how we can replicate some of that, how you can go beyond that, and what work would need to happen within LiveStore that it provides the right API surfaces and the right like primitives to make that possible. But that's something I'm really excited about, since we'll just like make the end user experience maybe not like that, but like a page that loads similarly quickly, but is giving you the actual experience.
Yeah, totally.
So yeah, that's a great point. And so I would suggest we can maybe follow up there, start a separate thread. And I think there's some low-hanging fruits there that will make it at least work for your specific scenario. And then also it might very well be that LiveStore currently is a bit in your way there. I would love to hear that feedback and make sure LiveStore feels good to use in that scenario. Those are just like constraints and points of feedback I haven't yet fully like internalized and fed back into the API design. So that's a fantastic point. Before moving on, you have submitted a few questions. Maybe you have another quick one before we move on. So you might remember from some of your submissions here. I'm not as quick as summarizing as a LM, but maybe it's still top of mind for you.
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, that first one we were looking at was just I was putting UI state into into a client document, like in the examples, and then I had a value that I wanted to be able to validate or parse, or however you want to refer to it, where I wanted to be able to say like this value can only exist between this range. It has to be rounded to two decimal places. And so I was using a materializer for that, where I was saying, okay, whatever payload it gets in the materializer, I'll apply those constraints. And that was good. It made sense. I felt like, it was like, it'll take whatever data and then have a predictable result from it, or a consistent result. But then when I wanted to expand the UI state, it seemed like the materializer, the types were telling me that I needed to provide everything for any event. Right. So I couldn't have and it seems like, okay, part of the idea of client document is that you don't have to worry about materializers. It's just built in. So I thought maybe this is the wrong way to do it.
That's a good point. So I would certainly encourage you to create an issue with this particular case. Chances are that there's still quite a few improvements that I can do to make that nicer in those scenarios. Generally, if you're working with, let's quickly open that. We have like a event schema somewhere. To do schema. So let's say we have this schema and we have for like those events. So let's say here for to do deleted, that's a good example where we have here a TypeScript is still initializing. Can do it. Okay, there you go. Come on, TypeScript. Don't be so slow. It was a side note to Igor. This is exactly what I was complaining about in regards to the monorepo setup, that TypeScript sometimes can get like really, really slow. So I don't know what this is about right now. But what I wanted to go to, let's see. I'll talk about it until like TypeScript decides to come back. So this schema here, like a schema is always like a mapping from like the value, how you use it when you have when you're interacting with it, and then how when the schema value is encoded. Now there we go. So this schema converts a string into a date. So it always maps between a string and a date, or uppercase date. And like, at least based on my usage, I found it most convenient that if you use an event somewhere and you say here to do deleted, and that you pass in this, and then you just pass in a date directly. However, sometimes it might also be convenient to, instead of passing in the date, that you pass in something like this. This is currently not allowed yet, but there might be legitimate use cases where this would be useful. And I'm thinking of providing a helper that where you say .encoded or something like that, which would, instead of working with the date, would work with this, which should probably also be at least a first step towards what you're pointing at. And then we can see whether this should probably also help with the derived events here. But let's also follow up on that. Please open an issue with that info, and then we'll get that shipped.
Sounds great.
Great points. All right, we have another 5 to 10 minutes, and I'll hand the mic to Kevin. Kevin is here. I think I've seen Kevin before, but I'm not sure whether he is in here, or maybe he needs to be. If he's not in the stage audience, it might be that Kevin needs to request to join in here. Otherwise, I'll see whether Kevin wants to join. Then we'll just skip once ahead, or I'll raise up the question here myself. Is it possible to use plugins with SQLite, specifically talking about SQLite Vec for vector embeddings? So I have a GitHub issue here for SQLite Vec specifically, SQLite Vec. And I've also met with the author of SQLite Vec, Alex Garcia, fantastic individual living in LA. And we're both, like Alex and I, we're both very excited about bringing SQLite Vec into LiveStore. It's just a matter of like time in making that happen. Given that how SQLite finds its way into a LiveStore app is like that you need to have like a build of SQLite. SQLite is not just like a JavaScript file where you import from it, but it's a more native thing that typically is like a binary somewhere, whether it's WASM or a native binary. And that thing needs to be built for what you have ultimately in mind. And currently we are maintaining our own fork of DOA SQLite. And in this fork, we have a WASM file for what we are currently needing. We have, actually, you can see two variants. We have the default one, which is used. I don't think this is necessarily used, but we have it as well. There is theoretically already a variant, which is slightly larger, but with like full text search. So this is 715 kilobyte. This one is 600 kilobyte. well, this will still be gzipped, so this will be significantly smaller. But the point is similarly, there's a trade-off as we want to bundle more stuff in SQLite, the bundle will get bigger. Not everyone wants that. So we need to figure out a way, how do we pre-build a version of SQLite that has the various plugins. At some point, there will be like SQLite components, or I think they're called SQLite realms or worlds or something like that, that will make this more pluggable, but we're not there yet. So basically, we would need to add another variant here, which had also SQLite VEC, and the more it becomes sort of like a permutation of options, the more of a performance maintenance burden it will be. But that is step one, like build one that has SQLite VEC embedded. And once it is embedded, then we also need the according binding through the various platforms, since WASM is used for the web adapter, but then we're also for the node adapter, we're currently using that as well, but in the future we'll use a more native version. And then in Expo, there's the equivalent. So we'll need to make sure that for all the adapters, there is the corresponding plugin already baked in some form. It requires some coordination work, but I think for like cases like SQLite VEC, it's very much worth it. And hopefully this gets more self-serve, easier in the future. But that's a great question. Then where's the data stored? Can I see the SQLite instance, or is that inaccessible because of OPFS? And is OPFS just storing a SQLite file? So that again depends on the adapter. So in the web adapter, we're using currently OPFS as the storage mechanism. You can access that. So if we're looking at a quick example, so let's go here, examples, and we open this one. This app here has, this is a new machine, and you still need to install it. There's the OPFS Explorer Chrome extension. And with that Chrome extension, if I reload this, we have the OPFS Explorer. And with that, there you go. There is a LiveStore folder, and that LiveStore folder has a couple of files. They're pretty opaque. This is because of like the specific storage mapping there. We're thinking of improving this further. This file and this file has your data in it. However, it has like a little file header that makes it a little bit harder to grasp. However, there's like the LiveStore helper here, where through this you can download the database at any time. And so this gives you the SQLite database right away, and it's basically just downloading this file and stripping like some header bytes. There's like a little header section of like 500 bytes or so. And that is stripped away, and then we're left with this fully functional SQLite file. So that's the way how it's working on web. There's also it's also working on Node. So if we're, for example, in this example, and I'm using the LiveStore CLI here, and I'm just let me run that and see whether this does anything. This is the older version. Let me quickly go to examples, Node, to do MVC. Okay, and package JSON. And I haven't run that in a while, but let's see whether it works when I say bun source main. So this has now run. And if you're opening the file, which is this simple node adapter, here we're seeing, okay, we're using the type file system and pointing it to this base directory TMP. And from there, it's using the store ID, etc. So let's look into this. We're here. So in TMP, we are using this test store ID. So in the test store ID, we have the files directly. So here there's no file header going on, so we can directly inspect the full glory of the SQLite database. And here we have it. So here we have the to-dos, buying a lot of milk. And here's the one that we just looked at. And here's the event logs. So short answer, it depends per platform. But typically, you should always be able to get to it. And notice there's like the state DB. And then here's the event log DB. And the event log DB contains the ultimate events. We are running up on time. Let's see whether we have one. Well, we have a few more. I'm just going chronologically. Ruby, you get to ask the last question if you want. And the next questions, the remaining questions will be rescheduled for next time. I'm sorry that we ran out of time, but it were great questions.
Yes, I'm interested in possibility to make compressions for events. For example, if I have like, I don't know, 10 events in 1 minute that are just like making incremental changes to upstate, and maybe even in future, if I want to make like history, I don't need like 10 of them. I can have only one event that summarizes all of them. And like, have you considered this possibility?
Yes, this is a fantastic point. Let's look at that through the lens of an example. So if we are, so let's go back to the second web to do MVC sync. And if we're running that and opening that in the, let's just open this here. And I'll bring this over. So this is our to-do MVC app. And in this to-do MVC app, I will just open the DevTools over here. And if we're looking at the events, and let's say I have this event here, and I'm now like completing and completing it here like tons of time. There's now a few perspectives here. So let's say this is some very sensitive data. And this is like, is really, really meaningful what has happened. Maybe this is health data, and you really want to see how often has a patient taken a certain pill. So at that point, you don't want to like all collapse it down to, yes, the patient has taken the pill over the last month, but you want to see exactly like, oh, the patient has taken the pill 31 times, and it really matters. And so you don't want to lose this information. Here, you could now say, actually, once it's been uncompleted, this is all I care about. I don't need all of this. So this is something that you basically need to express as part of the event definitions. And this is something that I have like fully researched and implemented a prototype of. I've just not shipped it yet as part of the full implementation of LiveStore. But the general idea is that and let me pull up some of the prototypes here to show it to you as part of the code. So hopefully I'll be able to find it quickly enough. So here it was in sync, next, and test and event fixtures. So the ideas here is basically that you express something that I call facts. Might be called different in the future, but the idea here is that you express something about an event. Here, like the fact about this is like, is it done or not? And so in this case, the fact would mean it's not done. In this case, it means it's done. And it's also about this particular ID with this particular to do. So if we have another one here, so whether this one is completed or uncompleted, this one is about this ID, this one is about this ID. So to express that, in this case, that we can say, hey, once a to-do has been uncompleted or completed, that like one always overrides the other. And if we would have, I don't know, let's say we have a bug in our app and there would be said completed twice in a row, that should also kind of resolve to the same. So here you define your set of facts. So that's actually the same example. And here we have the to-do is completed. For a given ID, is it completed? And this maps to this sort of fact. This is just a string or an ID to a value here. And in this case, the value is a Boolean, but it could be a number, it could be anything. And so you express it with this, and then you, or this is how you define your little like fact domain language. And then you annotate it here as part of your event definitions. So here, for example, let's look at this first. So when this event is being materialized, we'll modify the fact to be completed. And the same thing happens with uncompleted. And the same thing could happen with, like, let's say you have like a batch event or a toggle, like however you want to. This is like a bit of a kitchen sink example to just fully express what you can do with it. So this is in your, like in Overtone, for example, those are just like, I have 4 statements of those, and they're each one line, and that's all covering everything I need for Overtone. So this is, if this looks like a lot, as I just wanted to cover the edge cases. But beyond that, you can then also like even express, by the way, sorry, I shouldn't jump ahead here. Just by saying this, modify, and you set this to do completed, this would give LiveStore enough information to already like garbage compact away the old events. So this would already reach the goal that you have here. But the coolest thing about this is this does even more for us without, like, the only thing you need to specify is this. And what this would even give you on top is more help when you want to do merge conflict detection. Since, like, what is even a merge conflict in your app? This is actually very nuanced, and I think LiveStore provides one of the best answers to that in the entire local first space. When you want to, like, let's say we have 2 app instances of this, and so let's just say we open this another time, and when, well, they're synced, so it's hard for me to simulate those locally being offline. Well, but I can do so, and this is the last thing I'll do here. But let's say I have this over here, and I have this one over there, and here I'm simulating of going offline. So I now do this, and here I say this and this. What should happen? Should this user win? Should this user win? I don't know. I don't even know whether there's the right answer. In this case, the default is last right wins. So this one comes online last, so it gets checked. However, you could also, as the app author, you could say, no, actually, I want to show like a little merge conflict UI, like, from Git, and show that and let the user resolve that. But in order to do that, you now need to know which events even like conflict with each other versus which ones don't. You don't want to do that for everything that has potentially happened. And this is what you can express with this. So if 2 events like match the same fact, then this is even potentially a merge conflict that you can now in your app programmatically like deal with to implement like just a canonical rule, or even bring up to the user. So that's basically already 2 for 1. So through this thing here, you get the compaction. Let's check here. You get the compaction of your event history, which was what you wanted. You get the ability to define merge conflicts semantically. And the last thing you'll get is that you can even, where is it? You can also define like some require rules. And with require, this is like database constraints essentially, where you can say, actually, this is only allowed if this other fact is true. So we can only complete it and uncomplete it if that fact exists. And here we're even going as far as saying that this fact needs to be writable. So this is another exploration. We should do a deep dive in this at some point. So if this is flying above your head right now, I don't blame you. It took me a lot of time to like figure this out. and I want to make it as simple as possible. So there's still more work to be done here, but I hope that this already sheds some light on your question. We're already well over time. Those were brilliant questions. I saved the other ones for a future event. I'll stop sharing my screen at this point.